Good morning, Njabulo.
Good morning, Rian. How are you?
Well, under the circumstances, I think. Thank you. Missing work. Can you believe I'm saying that?
I suppose that's the feeling with everyone. Working from home does tend to be a lot harder than when we generally are in the office.
That is so true. But thank you for your time this morning. I'm very excited about speaking to you this morning. Just for our audience, Njabulo Duma is the head of compliance of the Stanlib Group for South Africa and the rest of Africa. And I think it's very well placed to speak about how you guys are experiencing this whole situation. What are the key risks that you see and how you're managing that? So I think, Njabulo, thank you for that, for your time. Just to kick off the discussion, maybe a question around your interaction with the business as a compliance, as the head of compliance. Yeah. What are those key points of contact, do you think?
Thank you, Rian. I think this is a very critical point, particularly during this period, because what you tend to find is under these circumstances, the touch points become quite a lot heavier than under ordinary circumstances. So right now, a compliance practitioner is front and center. You engage with senior management, involved with staff members, with your team as well, just to make sure that you are able to be at the thick of things and make sure that the speed of execution with which management and all key stakeholders are trying to execute, you are right at the center. So points of interaction becomes your senior management, staff members in the business, your team as well, across the entire organization.
And what about higher up, Njabulo? Do you have any contact with the board of directors during this time?
Correct. So during this time, I think it's a common cause. Everyone is quite anxious about how as organizations and how as the country are emerging after this particular situation. So that constant interaction with the board becomes extremely important. Senior management on the side, and it's not just to interact for the sake of interaction. I think this particular period has set us to be very clear about areas of engagement. There are priorities that we need to execute under this period to make sure that we come out of after the lockdown quite successful. So the board is remaining extremely on top of things, and management is clear about the key areas of strategy that need to take us out of this situation. So that engagement is quite thorough and as wide as that. All key stakeholders of the business trying to achieve one common goal with clear set of priorities and points of deliverables during this particular period. Those are the key points of interaction right now. Yeah.
And I would imagine that from, if I were a director, which I am of the Institute, but it's not as big as Stanlib, of course. But as a director, you always have that sort of Damocles hanging over your head of personal liability, accusations of reckless trading. So I would imagine that those are the kind of things that play into a board member or a director's mind. What are the specific steps and maybe practical activities that you've launched during this time as the head of compliance to help them and to support them?
Yeah, you're quite right. So director liability is a key thing. I think though under these circumstances, the priority does become how do we assist the country to emerge out of this situation? And you'd have seen regulators releasing a lot of guidelines, a lot of directives, a lot of guidance documents to sort of ease some of the compliance requirements to ensure that they facilitate ease with which organizations are managing themselves during this period. so that's a key point number one. Point number two is that as a compliance practitioner, the key point is that there is a quality interpretation of all those guidelines to ensure that the decisions taken by the business during this period is consistent with those requirements as released by the regulator. I think that's one very key piece with which you can assist board members as they navigate their director liability concepts during this period. So one, quality of interpretation of those guidelines to make sure that the decisions of the business during this period are consistent with that. That's number one. Number two, all the key call it requirements in terms of your business continuity, in terms of your operational ability as a firm,